Is life really as serious as we think? From the moment we are born, we are taught that we must win, must achieve something in order to be worthy. But Alan Watts once said, "Life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be participated in." And the problem is, most of us have forgotten that we are playing and have allowed the game to control us. In today's video, we are going to hack the game of life, to understand how it operates, why we so often feel stuck, and more importantly, how to find freedom within the very game itself. This isn't abstract philosophy, it is a wake-up call. Because once you realize the rules of the game, you are no longer a pawn. You become the creator of your own rules. Imagine this: if every step, every failure, every fear were merely a challenge in the grand game called life, would you dare to play again? But this time with a freer, lighter smile? Stay until the end of this video, because perhaps just a few minutes from now, you will see the world through completely different eyes. Alan Watts once said, "We do not come into this world to suffer, but to dance." And yet, in the noise and urgency of our times, humanity has turned that dance into a fierce competition. Every step is scored, every mistake punished. We are taught that life is a serious journey, where only the best, the strongest, and the most hard-working are allowed to be happy. And within that belief, we fall into a subtle trap, the trap of making life too serious. Alan Watts saw this paradox early on. He did not reject effort or discipline. He simply pointed out that when we take life too seriously, we lose the original joy of simply being alive. Like a child playing with building blocks, when it's fun, we create. When we fear losing, our hands begin to tremble. Adults are the same. We try to control everything, to predict every move, and in doing so, we forget the essential truth. A game ceases to be a game when we are afraid to lose. Watts did not deny that life includes pain and challenges. But he asked a question that makes us stop and think, what if life is actually just a game? That question doesn't deny reality, it awakens the spirit. Because when we see life as a game, we allow ourselves to make mistakes. We allow ourselves to try. We allow ourselves to laugh at failure and stand up again without shame. Then the pressure dissolves, and creativity, the most natural essence of the soul, begins to rise. It is here that Alan Watts hacked the mental system of modern humanity. He invited us to look at life not through the lens of fear, but of curiosity. Not to win. Because if this game has no final destination, then every moment becomes the reward. Life, according to Watts, doesn't need to be fully understood. It only needs to be felt. Think about it. If you saw everything, work, love, failure, unfinished dreams, as stages in a grand adventure, wouldn't you behave differently? Perhaps you would move more lightly, love more bravely, and even be grateful for your falls. That is what Alan Watts sought to offer. Not a formula for living, but an inner freedom born from understanding that life is not a prison, but a dance, and our only task is to learn how to move with its rhythm. When we realize that life is only a game, another question naturally arises. Who is the one playing? Here, Alan Watts takes us deeper, to the source of joy, of creativity, of presence, to the place where the child within us once existed, free and innocent. And in that journey, he draws a powerful comparison, the adult and the child at play. Watts saw in children a kind of original wisdom that adults have lost. When a child pretends to be a doctor, a superhero, or a princess, they throw themselves fully into the role. They cry, they laugh, they argue, they live in that character, but deep down, they still know it is only a game. That awareness gives them freedom. They can die as a superhero today and be reborn, pirate tomorrow, without suffering. Adults, on the other hand, are different. We too are playing the games called career, love, reputation, self-image, but we have forgotten that we are playing. We become so serious that we start believing those roles are our true selves. We turn into method actors in the play of life, living, suffering, and losing ourselves beneath society's masks. When you believe you must be the successful one, or that you are forever the failure, you have forgotten the most important truth. You are only playing a temporary role. Watts called this the confusion between play and reality. When we forget that we are playing, the game becomes a prison. You stop laughing when you fall, stop singing in the rain, stop dreaming because it feels unrealistic. And so you begin to live like a robot obeying a script, instead of an artist creating your own play. But if we could relearn the art of playing like a child, diving into each role with full passion, yet keeping a mindful smile in our hearts, life would change its color. We could work wholeheartedly without being bound by results, love deeply without fearing loss, fail yet still keep our sense of humor. Because we know it is all just a game, and we are the ones playing it, not the pawns being moved around. That is precisely the spirit Alan Watts sought to awaken. Play, but never forget that you are playing. When you remember that, life stops being a burden. It returns to being a free dance, where you are at once the creator, the witness, and the smiling child, rejoicing in the infinite joy of existence. If earlier, Alan Watts reminded us of the art of playing like a child, fully immersed yet never forgetting it's just a game, then the next step in awakening is realizing who is truly playing. This is the most delicate turning point in his philosophy, where we begin to see beyond the role, beyond the name, beyond even the story we once believed was us. Watts said, "You are not the person who bears your name." This seemingly simple sentence is the key that opens the deepest door of consciousness. For we often identify ourselves with our identities, professions, or memories, masks we wear in the play of life. We believe we are the successful one, the failure, the lover, the victim, but these are all temporary roles within the endless flow of existence. The real you, the one who witnesses, who observes every role, has always been there, unchanged, still and radiant. Alan Watts called this pure awareness, the deepest part of our being, untouched by time, fame, or circumstance. When you realize that you are the observer, not the observed, everything changes. You can still play the game, but it no longer consumes you. You can cry without despair, get angry without hatred, love without attachment. Because at the deepest level of awareness, you know that everything is but waves moving across the still lake of consciousness. And that is the moment you become truly free. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to grasp. You begin to play well, not because you want to win, but for the sheer joy of living, creating, and experiencing. Just as a great artist doesn't play for applause, but because music is their breath, you too begin to live not for outcomes, but because living itself is joy. Watts wanted us to see that the character named you is merely an image on the stage of the universe. But you, the one sitting there, seeing, feeling, are the real player. And when you remember this, life continues as before, Yet it is no longer a tense pursuit of becoming someone. It becomes a melody you freely join in, a game where you are both the creator and the audience. And within that realization, you stop searching for freedom elsewhere, because you see that you are freedom itself. When we recognize that the true player is not the character bearing our name, but the consciousness observing all happenings, a new door opens. We begin to see the game of life through different eyes. If before, we played to win, to reach some endpoint, now we simply play to live, to feel, to be present. And in that very moment, Alan Watts brings us to one of his most profound principles. The rule of life is, there is no destination. Watts once said, "Life is like music or a dance. Its purpose is not to get somewhere, but to enjoy it as it unfolds." Music would lose its meaning if we only waited for the final note. A dance would be pointless if we only cared about its end. Yet humans live as if there were some destination to reach, study to work, work to succeed, succeed to retire. And then, looking back, we realize we never truly lived a single day. Watts saw this tragedy in modern society. People are running endlessly, without knowing where they are going. We are swept up in an industrial rhythm, clocks, goals, schedules, expectations, and in this race, we forget the only thing that truly exists, the present. Every passing second is where the game is happening. The past is only memory, the future only imagination. But this moment, right now, is all of life, the music that is being played. Watts never told us to abandon effort or ambition. He simply urged us to awaken amid the race. When you work, work as if you are dancing, moving with the rhythm, not for the reward, but for the joy of each step. When you love, love as if you are singing, not for the ending, but for every note of connection. Life does not need you to arrive anywhere. It only asks that you be fully present in every moment that unfolds. When you understand this rule of the game, you realize there is nothing to achieve because you were never missing anything. The entire journey has always been perfect in its very incompleteness. And when you stop searching for a destination, life becomes lighter. No longer a race, but an endless symphony. And perhaps that is the secret of the game Alan Watts wanted us to discover. Stop, listen, and dance with life. For only when you are present in this music do you truly live, not as someone running, but as one merging with the rhythm of eternity. When we understand that life has no destination, that its true value lies in every unfolding moment, another question arises within us. If everything is just a game, can anyone really lose? Alan Watts smiled and answered, "No one loses. Because you are not merely the player, you are the whole game." And this is one of the most profound and liberating realizations in Watts's philosophy. He believed that life is not a chessboard with winners and losers, but a universe playing with itself. When you laugh, cry, love, get angry, fail, or succeed, all are different expressions of the same energy experiencing itself. The separate I we cling to is just a small wave upon the infinite ocean of consciousness. You are not apart from the game. You are the game. Watts said the universe is like a great artist, constantly creating new forms to explore itself. Every person, every circumstance, every event, whether beautiful or tragic, is part of that grand composition. When you face hardship, it is not the universe against you, but the universe playing with you through another role. When you understand this, your heart softens. You no longer react harshly to life, nor cling to fleeting victories or defeats. Because you know the game has always been set in your favor, not in a material or success-driven sense, but in a spiritual one. Everything happening is in service of your awakening. And when you begin to see the world through these eyes, everything, every person you meet, whether they hurt you or bring you joy, becomes a mirror reflecting a part of yourself. Every experience, whether painful or blissful, becomes a lesson that you, as the entire universe in human form, have designed to explore yourself more deeply. Alan Watts called this the transformation from ego to cosmic self. When you understand that no one truly wins or loses, that no one is left behind, the game of life becomes more wondrous than ever. You can laugh at failures, play wholeheartedly in every moment, and love life like a child marveling at the magical game it has created. And perhaps that is the highest level secret in the game Watts wanted to reveal. You don't need to win to be free, because you are freedom itself. When you realize this, you no longer fear life. You begin to savor it, with an open heart and a tranquil mind, like an artist smiling within their own masterpiece. When we understand that no one truly loses in this game, that we are the whole game, the player and the stage, the music and the listener, something natural happens. We begin to play more lightly. No longer striving to win, no longer clinging or controlling, we learn to touch life with a gentle hand. And here, Alan Watts offers a beautiful image. Life is not a classical symphony, but a spontaneous jazz piece. Watts said that while classical music demands with rigid structure, every note and beat perfectly precise, jazz is the opposite. Jazz is the art of freedom, of improvisation, of playing. Playing, rather than performing. It is alive, fluid, ever-changing with the player's mood. Life is the same. If we live like a classical score, trying to be correct, proper, stable, and flawless, we become stiff. But when we live like jazz, willing to loosen up, to create, to embrace even the off notes, we begin to truly harmonize with life. Watts called this the art of playing with a light touch. It is the state of being fully engaged, yet unattached to results. You give your all, yet remain at peace within. You work, love, and create, yet are not defined by what you do. Like the jazz musician, who doesn't need to know the next note, but trusts the rhythm within, you too begin to live with grace, flow, and effortless freedom. When you live with a light touch, you begin to let life breathe on its own. There's no need to cling rigidly to consistency, no need to hold on to a fixed image of who I am. Today you may be the teacher, tomorrow the student. Today strong, tomorrow tender, and all of it is perfectly fine. Because the essence of the game is change. Beauty doesn't lie in remaining the same, but in the infinite capacity to recreate, like a child who can become anyone it wishes, at any time. And within that flexibility, we find profound freedom. No more need to prove ourselves, no more fear of being wrong or of losing. We can live lightly, creatively, and naturally, like breathing itself. Life then becomes a jazz melody unfolding, full of inspiration, surprise, and truth. Alan Watts wanted us to understand that playing lightly does not mean being careless, but living mindfully within flexibility. When we know when to let go, when to hold on, when to be silent, and when to sing, we begin to sense the rhythm of the universe. And in that rhythm, each of us is an artist, not needing perfection, only sincerity. For only when we dare to play with a light touch do we truly find freedom in the grand symphony called life. When we learn to play with a light touch, without clinging, without control, as fluid as water, we begin to sense something deeper, that we are not playing alone. Life is not a solo, but a symphony. And at this level of awareness, Alan Watts leads us to one of the most subtle truths in his philosophy. We are all one. Watts once said, "We are like waves on the same ocean, seemingly separate, but never apart from the sea." Every human being is a different form of the same cosmic consciousness experiencing itself. When you meet someone kind, it is your gentle side smiling back at you. When you meet someone difficult, it is your wounded part seeking healing. Every person, every situation, every life, good or bad, is a mirror reflecting a piece of yourself. But modern humans have forgotten this. We divide, compare, judge, as if the world were an arena where I must defeat you. This illusion of separateness is what makes us lonely, defensive. Alan Watts saw this tragedy and gently asked, if we are all just different windows looking out from the same house of consciousness, who are we fighting against? When you realize there is no true other, that every soul is a different perspective of the same living essence, something miraculous happens. Compassion arises effortlessly. You no longer need to force forgiveness nor try to love. Empathy becomes instinctive because you see clearly. To hurt another is to hurt yourself. To help another is to heal yourself. Watts called this the dissolution of the ego into the ocean of being. When the small self dissolves, only infinite connection remains. We begin to see the world with gentler eyes, speak more slowly, and love more sincerely, not out of morality, but out of wisdom. Because we understand everything is just one stream of life, playing the game of fragmentation only to rediscover itself. And in that moment, the world becomes astonishingly bright. There is no longer me and them, only us, learning, experiencing, and returning home together. Alan Watts wanted us to feel this truth, not as an idea, but as a living experience, when you look into another's eyes and see yourself smiling back. For in the end, the great game of life has only one player, and it is all of us. When we realize that all of us are but different expressions of the same consciousness, a natural question arises. If the universe is a perfect symphony, why does suffering exist? Here, Alan Watts takes one step further, into the realm that every human knows intimately: pain. But he doesn't look at it with despair, he looks with awareness. Watts drew a clear distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is a natural part of the game, while suffering is the story the mind adds to it. He said, "Life is not wrong for making you hurt. It only seems wrong when you believe it shouldn't happen." This seemingly simple sentence carries the whole secret of liberation. Because pain is inevitable, the body gets hurt, the heart breaks, dreams fall apart. That is the nature of a game that is alive and changing. But suffering, the torment, the blame, and the resentment is a choice of the mind. It arises when we reject the present, when we tell ourselves, "This should not be happening." Then Watts believed that this resistance is the true root of suffering. When we fight reality, we become tense, fractured. But when we pause, breathe deeply, and allow the pain to simply be, we begin to see something miraculous. Pain is only a wave, while we, the one who observes, are the ocean. The wave may be fierce, but it can never destroy the sea. When we live with this understanding, we no longer run from pain. We welcome it as part of the game. Like an artist feeling each low note in a melody, we learn to listen to our pain without becoming it. In that silence, a space opens, a space where we realize we are still okay, even when everything seems to fall apart. And in that very moment, suffering dissolves, leaving only pure clarity. Watts never told us to be numb or to deny emotion. He simply invited us to look directly at it, like greeting an old friend who has come to visit. When we stop labeling pain as good or bad, it loses its power to bind us. We feel it, and then we let it go, like smoke fading into the air. From that understanding, we learn the most precious lesson of the game of life. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. When we stop resisting the present, pain becomes a teacher, and we return to being free players, lighter, deeper, and more awake than ever. When we realize that pain is a natural part of the game, and suffering is merely a story the mind creates, a profound stillness begins to emerge within us. From that stillness, Alan Watts leads us to a higher level of awareness, where we stop fighting life and begin to flow with it. Because once we stop struggling against pain, the only thing left to learn is how to float. Watts often compared human beings to water. Water never tries to defeat the rock, yet over time it wears down mountains. It does not resist or fight. It simply flows in the right direction, at the right pace, in the right moment. And here he introduced a core concept from Eastern philosophy, the art of Wu Wei, or effortless action, from Lao Tzu. According to Watts, Wu Wei is not passivity or resignation, it is skillful surrender. When we stop trying to control everything, we create space for life to unfold in its own perfect way. Just as a river knows its way to the sea, life carries its own intelligence. The problem is that humans are often too afraid to trust it. We want to control outcomes, bend the flow to our will, and in doing so, we wound ourselves. Watts said that the wise person is one who rides the waves instead of trying to block the water. When we trust the natural rhythm of the universe, every action becomes light, yet effective. We no longer need to overexert ourselves or micromanage every detail, because life already knows what it's doing. Like the jazz musician he once spoke of, we only need to feel the rhythm, listen closely to the music, and let our hands move naturally. This requires courage, the courage to let go, the courage to not know. But once we do, we realize that life functions far more beautifully than any plan we could have designed. Opportunities, people, and events appear at the right time, in the right way, as if the universe itself were smiling and guiding us. Watts once said, "When you learn to flow, you don't lose control. You become part of the flow that controls everything." And that is the secret of serenity. Without strain, without struggle, we can still move forward, naturally, gracefully, and deeply. Ultimately, the art of flowing that Alan Watts spoke of is not just a philosophy, but a state of being. When you stop trying to control life, life begins to bloom in its own beautiful way. And in that moment, you are no longer the one resisting the current. You are the current itself, free, fluid, eternal. When we have learned the art of flowing, to release, to yield, to listen to the natural rhythm of life, we begin to notice something even more wondrous, that the flow itself is not fixed. It is not a one-way river, but an ocean constantly recreating itself. And here, Alan Watts reveals one of the deepest secrets of the game of life. The rules are not fixed. The way you play determines the rules. Watts believed that life is an infinite creative game, where every human being is both artist and architect of reality. The universe does not impose rigid laws you must obey. It merely reflects the energy you bring. When you play through fear, you create a world filled with resistance and pain. When you play with curiosity, openness, and trust, the world responds with opportunities, synchronicities, and what seem like miracles. Watts compared human consciousness to a painter standing before the blank canvas of the universe. Every thought, every emotion, every action is a brushstroke shaping the picture of reality. We are not passive observers, we are co-creators with the universe. And when we realize this, a profound power awakens within us, the power of awareness. According to Alan Watts, the problem is that most of us play this game unconsciously. We paint with fear, with doubt, with the old stories programmed into us by society. We think life must be this way or that way, and within those very limits, we unknowingly build invisible walls around ourselves. But when we shift into a state of conscious creation, when we play with love, with trust, and with curiosity, we begin to see the rules of the game change. What once were obstacles become stepping stones. What once caused pain opens doors to new awareness. Watts called this the game of creative consciousness. It isn't based on power or control, but on partnership with the universe. When you move in harmony with the rhythm of life, you and life become two musicians improvising together in a grand cosmic jazz. You play a note, and the universe answers with a melody. And in that communion, miracles happen. When you understand that the rules aren't fixed, you stop fearing the future. You know that whatever happens, you still have the power to choose your response, and that very choice shapes the next reality. There are no victims in this game. Everyone is a creator. And that is the spirit Alan Watts wanted us to embrace. Play life as a free artist. Don't be afraid to erase, to start again, because the painting was never finished. It's always being made, and the brush has always been in your hand. When we realize that the rules aren't fixed, that our own consciousness creates reality, that we can change the rhythm of life simply by changing the way we play, a deep sense of freedom begins to bloom. And within that space of freedom, Alan Watts smiles and reveals a final, gentle, radiant truth. In this cosmic game, no one has to lose. Because when one person is truly happy, they are not separate from others. They make the whole game more beautiful for everyone. Watts said that in its deepest essence, life is not a competition, but a symphony. People only think they must win when they still believe they are separate from the whole. But once we realize that we are all one, that we and others are just different roles played by the same consciousness, winning takes on a new meaning. No one needs to lose for us to succeed. Every person who is happy, awake, and loving adds beauty to the entire game. Watts often compared this to a jazz band. Each musician doesn't try to outshine the others, but simply plays their part with passion. When everyone plays fully, the music becomes whole for all. Life is the same. When you live fully, when you're joyful, when you're free, you naturally make others feel lighter and braver. Your energy spreads, not through preaching, but through presence. And here is the point Watts emphasized. The awakened person doesn't compete. They play for the joy of playing. They no longer care about being first or being recognized. For them, the act itself is the reward. They laugh when they fall, sing in the storm, and help others without reason, because they understand that this game isn't about winning. It's about experiencing life itself. Watts once said, "If you see life as a game, remember you can't win a piece of music. You can only play it beautifully." That sentence encapsulates the spirit of his philosophy. The true winner is not the one who achieves the most, but the one who feels the most deeply. When you play with pure joy, not for results, not for status, you become free, and in that freedom, you have already won. And the most beautiful part is this: in that state, you don't win only for yourself. You inspire others to play with more open hearts. The game of the universe is a game of expansion, one joy touching another, one flame lighting thousands more. That is the true victory Watts wanted us to understand. Victory not through conquering the world, but through becoming part of its harmony. In that moment, everyone wins. When we realize that in this cosmic game, no one truly loses, that each of us simply adds to the richness of life's symphony, everything begins to feel astonishingly light. And then, Alan Watts gently leads us into the final chapter, where even the thing humans fear most, death itself, turns out to be just a natural continuation of the game. He described it with poetic grace. Death is merely a change of roles. And according to Watts, nothing in the universe ever truly disappears. Everything transforms, like a wave receding only to return in another form. Humans are the same. When the body dissolves, consciousness does not end. It merely changes costume, shifting into a new role in the infinite play of life. Death, therefore, is not a full stop, but a comma in the endless story of awareness exploring itself. Watts believed that the fear of death arises from the illusion of self, the illusion that I am a separate being with a beginning and an end. But when we understand that we are not just this body, but the living energy flowing through everything, the trees, the wind, the ocean, the light, then death ceases to be the enemy. It is merely transformation, like water turning to vapor, then returning as rain. Imagine, if life were a grand play, then death would be the moment an actor steps backstage to change costume and return to the stage in another role. No one disappears. There are only different expressions of the same consciousness continuing the game. And when we understand this, we not only fear death less, we begin to live more completely. Because when you understand that everything is temporary, yet never truly lost, you stop clinging. You dare to love, to laugh, to cry, because you know that every experience is but a scene in the cosmic play. Death does not take life away, it gives life meaning. It teaches us to cherish each fleeting moment, for we know that this very moment, though fragile, is the doorway to eternity. Alan Watts once said, "There is nothing to fear in death, for you cannot die. You merely change form to continue the game." And when you realize that, you reach the ultimate freedom, freedom from fear, from attachment, from the illusion of separation. Life and death, then, are no longer opposites, but two breaths of the same infinite song. For in the end, as Watts affirmed, life itself is the eternal dance of consciousness discovering itself. And in that dance there is no beginning, no end, only souls smiling, changing roles, and continuing to play. Remember this: you are not a small individual in a vast universe. You are the universe playing the game of being human. So play fully, play gracefully, play joyfully, for everyone wins, and this game never ends.